All right, guys, first ever training module today. We're going to start with some movement basics. Our first video is going to be breathing. We're going to try and keep this in order of how I teach it in person hands-on training, and we're going to adapt it to your remote experience. Make sure that you guys get one of the most detailed processes remotely as possible. We want to pay attention to the details still when we're doing remote training. I feel like it gets glossed over sometimes, and that can lead to some adaptations that we don't want long term. So we're going to go in depth. We're going to dive in today. Breathing is going to be first. Rib cage, spine, pelvis are going to be to follow in the movement basics, but we're going to go over it all eventually. So, overview of breathing. Biggest takeaway, I want you guys to think about our respiratory system in terms of training as a pressure gradient. So if we can create pressure, if we can pressurize our body, it's going to create a ton of stability, right? A ton of stability. And if we don't know how to pressurize, we can't create pressure in our body, we can't create stability from that. And it's going to equal less mobility. It's going to equal less conditioning. It's just going to be all around awful for our training adaptations. So we really want to know how to breathe first, because we're always going to be practicing it, always going to be refining it. Maybe not always thinking about it, but we do want to keep getting better. So our objectives and goals for today. We want to understand the functional and performance benefits of focused breathing, knowing how to breathe, understand breathing mechanics and the anatomy, so you guys will be able to self-cue yourself while you're training. And then we want you to be able to apply it to your training, because if you can't apply it, it doesn't matter, right? I'm super application based. The science is cool, all that stuff, but I just want you to know enough to apply it really, really well. And then you're going to have to set aside time after to practice this stuff. This stuff is going to take time, just like training. Nothing comes automatically. First time you practice, you may not even feel the things that I talk about today, but eventually you will. It took me a lot of time to feel these things. It takes people months, maybe even years to perfect this. Okay, so what to learn today? We have our anatomy first, and we'll go over what good breathing versus bad breathing looks like. I don't like calling things bad, but we're just going to label that today, because there are some things you really don't want to do when it comes to breathing and exercising, especially if we're lifting weights. Learning techniques that are going to allow you to apply this better, and then where and how is it applied in training, whether we're doing cardio, lifting, mobility, all of that. So anatomy 101 of breathing. We're going to talk about our trachea and bronchi. Not a lot of people think about this, but when I'm training, the position of my neck and head is going to also change my airways. If you train with me in person, or if you have asked me about the position of your neck, I probably already told you about this, but if I'm always here compressed in this awful position, looks terrible, I'm not going to be able to breathe, right? If I'm pulling weight and I'm doing that, or if I'm squatting and I'm looking up, it's going to limit my breathing. You can even hear it in my voice. Okay, so the trachea, super important piece of breathing. We want to keep that airway open when we're training. Okay, the position of the neck is really going to be dependent on, can I keep that trachea open and can I stabilize around? We'll get into those stabilizing muscles a little bit later. Then we have our lungs. Everyone knows about our lungs, right? Exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. We know that we need oxygen to perform. We need oxygen to live. So the lungs are going to be super helpful when it comes to life, but they also are super helpful in terms of they're actually a physical structure. And when we inhale, they fill up with air. And when we exhale, they close, right? So when we inhale, they get bigger, and we can feel them get bigger, and we can feel them press into muscles. And when we exhale, we can feel those muscles push that air out. We'll talk about that more. We have the diaphragm. The diaphragm, it is a muscle. It's an active muscle, but it also is our main breathing muscle. Okay, we don't think about it a lot because passively it aids in breathing, but we're going to teach you how to feel the diaphragm. You'll notice the diaphragm, it kind of sits concave in, And then when we inhale, it turns into a convex structure. So it's going to change a lot in the midsection in the torso. It also has a lot of insertion points around our rib cage, even inserts on our spine. You'll see those little muscles in the back. Look at those little muscles right here. Those insert on the spine. So it can help us stabilize our spine. It's super important. Help us stabilize our spine. Or if we really don't know how to control the diaphragm, it's going to create an unstable back, especially if our heart rate's up and it's going, right? Then we have our rib cage. It expands and contracts to support breathing, protects the lungs. There's also a bunch of musculature located on the inside of the rib cage. Rib cage is going to be super important for breathing, and breathing is going to be super important for creating a strong rib cage. Okay, those old school bodybuilders that you see and they suck their stomachs in and their rib cage gets really big, they train that and it helped them get really strong, helped them get really stable. Okay, let's talk about good versus bad breathing. Bad breathing. Okay, bad breathing. First of all, if you're not breathing, bad breathing. We want to aspire for a holistic and even expansion. A lot of times, we'll talk about breathing, we have a video here, but a lot of times you'll see people that aren't thinking about their breath, they get into this pattern of short, shallow breaths, right? They don't like to breathe in, but our body is meant to expand. And not just expand in the belly, not just expand in the chest, expand everywhere holistically, 360 degrees around our body, okay? We want full control of breathing and where you put your air. I can control where my air goes. Now, air doesn't go into my hips, okay? It doesn't go into my head, but changing the structure of my lungs, controlling where air is pushing into in my body is going to affect the posture of my body, the position. Posture is really just a fancy word for position. So where you put your air is going to be super important. Notice if I said breathe into your back, you can maybe breathe into your back, breathe into your chest, breathe into your chest. If I say breathe up into your head, probably don't want to do that, but you can breathe up here. I look really crazy. And then you can breathe into your belly. People call that belly breathing. So that's going to be one of the things to avoid: excessive expansion in one area. Belly breathing isn't bad. It's actually a technique. We actually practice breathing in one area. But in terms of training, we want that even expansion, right? So I don't just want my belly to be the only thing that moves when I breathe, and then my rib cage stays small and compressed. Okay, it's like when you squeeze a balloon, right? And then it starts to stretch out. We don't want that. Okay, lack of expansion means you're stuck in compression. Stuck in compression means that you will be doing a lot of things. Okay, you will be less stable, but you also will have a tougher time building muscle. You'll probably feel it. It won't feel good on your joints. Okay, we want to be tissue driven, and we need expansion to be tissue driven. So expansion, big theme here. Okay, let's look at this video here and let's chat about it a little bit. Let's see this guy breathe, because there's a lot to unpack here. Okay, hopefully you guys don't go to the gym dressed like this. Okay, first thing you see, okay, he puts his hand on his stomach. Puts his hand on his stomach. Oh, we got to go back to that. Make sure I pause the video and don't go to the next. Hands on stomach, hands on chest. Okay, this is perfect. It's great to get started. Tactile cues are big. Okay, always trying to feel things. If you can't feel it, you can't train it. So hand on belly, hand on chest. He's making sure that he's not just breathing into his chest or not just breathing into his belly, but he's going to be breathing everywhere. So let's watch him inhale. Oh, so he inhales. Watch the first thing that happens when he inhales. This is tough. Let's see if I can get this guy. Nope, that's not what we wanted. We're going to go back and play it again. Sorry, guys. Nope. Okay. When he breathes in, watch his belly. He goes straight to the belly. Okay, he pushes the belly out. That's okay. And then he elevates up through the chest. Good expansion, but we're going to say that he's probably expanding anteriorly, so the front of his body a little too much. We want to get some more probably posterior expansion, especially for lifting. Okay, notice too, when he exhales, he compresses. expansion and compression. He expands through the belly, expands through the chest, and then he exhales, everything lowers, okay? Big thing we talked about, we need expansion for strong muscles. I want you to watch his neck muscles when we replay this video again, okay? These are your scalenes. They're super important for elevating the ribs and breathing, stabilizing the neck. We've already talked about that. Watch when he inhales. He inhales up. Let's see if we can see those neck muscles. Look at that. Those guys are holding on for dear life. He's got strong scalenes, that's for sure. Those get incorporated into his breath pretty early. It's probably because he's breathing out the front, right? If I'm breathing out the front, these guys are really going to be working. Okay, if I'm breathing holistically, a little bit in the front, a little bit in the back, lets these chill out, and then I have more room to breathe, and I can go further and further. Okay, so he's really into the front side of his body. Okay, we want to be breathing into the scalenes, the traps, all of it. Okay, so not bad breathing. Gives you guys a good visual representation of what expansion and compression looks like, but there are definitely some more things that we can look at fixing. Okay, why this matters in training. If you cannot breathe, you do not own that position. Someone's quote, I use it all the time. If you're holding a position, especially if you're underweight and you just can't breathe, you feel super compressed and you can't breathe, you're never going to own that position, right? If I'm doing a squat, I should be able to breathe in every position. If I'm doing a lunge, I should be able to breathe. If I'm static stretching, I should be able to breathe. If I cannot breathe at all, I'm probably too deep into it. I might need to shorten my range of motion. Make sure that I have that control of the breath. Breath work and understanding breathing during exercises are completely different ideas and use different techniques, but they do benefit each other, okay? They do benefit each other. You're just going to use a different technique. Okay. For training, our breath is going to improve our stability, improve our mobility, improve our endurance, right? If we can get more air in it more efficiently, it's going to improve our endurance. And also it's going to allow for quicker recovery because oxygen is going to be the main substrate for our muscles, okay, for our brain. Sorry, people talk about macros and stuff all the time, but if we don't have oxygen, none of it happens. We're going to be able to recover quicker because it can re-up our energy, okay? Health and stress allows us to regulate our nervous system. If you are always in a sympathetic state of stress, you're probably compressed. If we learn how to breathe, it's going to help us expand. Neurologically, it's going to help us relax a little bit more. It's going to help us focus. It's going to increase our mental clarity. We're going to be able to recover quicker from those stressful instances that aren't even training. Maybe you have a stressful day at work. Some breath work can definitely help you get back into that parasympathetic state, out of that sympathetic state. For both, the oxygen delivery is huge, okay? It matters a ton. Also, we don't touch on this slide, but we talked about it already. It is going to be super important for our movement. All movement is expansion or compression, okay? Expansion or compression. And our expansion and compression starts with our breathing, okay? We'll talk about that more later. Okay, so when you go and practice this, refer to Breathwork 101 in our on-demand program library, our on-demand library, and then in your program via the app, okay? On-demand and in program via the app. Then our steps for what I want you guys thinking. This is gonna be like your roadmap to doing good breathing, okay? We want to first practice with diaphragmatic breathing, okay? The diaphragm is our reference point for our breath work, okay? It all starts with the diaphragm. It's the first thing I want you guys feeling. If we can control the diaphragm, it's gonna allow us to control a lot of other pieces. I want you guys to make sure that you have control of your air, where you put your air in your chest cavity, okay? Play around, breathing into the back, breathing up into the shoulders, breathing down into the belly, breathing into the lower back, and then practice breathing everywhere at once evenly, okay? That's the end goal. And then we talked about expansion versus compression, okay? Practice expanding and compressing and understand when a movement is going to be compressive and when it's going to be expansive. Expand our body, okay? Then our positioning affects our airflow, and our airflow will affect our position. So if I crunch over and I can't breathe, that's going to affect my breathing. It's going to affect my performance. It's going to affect my strength. It's going to affect the muscles that I'm trying to build. Okay. Positioning affects our airflow, but also our airflow affects our position. So if I take a deep inhale and try and bend over, I got a lot of air in there. I can't get it out. It makes it a lot harder. So when you practice this, diaphragmatic breathing first, find the diaphragm, learn how to control your air and where you put your air. Okay. Understand expansion and compression. Okay. If I'm breathing in and I'm expanding, so if I'm externally rotating my shoulder, that's going to be expanding. I'm breathing in while I'm doing that. And then when I internally rotate it, bring it down. That's compressive. I can breathe out, right? And get into further range of motion. If I breathe in, I can get further into external rotation. All of our movement follows that pattern. Needs a little bit more depth, but you'll get it, okay? You'll get it. Ask me if you have questions. And then understand positioning and understand breathing, right? If we're working on mobility or we're working on range of motion, I want to get into a deep, good range of motion. And the bottom of that range of motion, I should have air in my body. I shouldn't be folded over like a pancake, not able to breathe in, because I'm probably not doing anything good for my movement, okay? I want to be doing something good for my movement on every single rep. We want perfect reps. We don't just want to be going through the motions. I'm trying to keep this one pretty short. It's our first module. There's going to be a lot to unpack. Also, we work out too, so you're going to have that video to refer to. I just want you to understand the baseline and start a conversation. So the conclusion in the system, in my system, breathing is the foundation that we want to build our movement from, okay? Breathing is the foundation we want to build our movement from. If we cannot breathe well, it is going to be hard to create long-term lasting positive adaptation, and everything is going to be so much better if you learn to breathe, and it's going to happen so much faster. We're going to build muscle faster. We're going to get in better shape faster because we're going to be able to recover. We're going to have better endurance. Okay. Breathing is the foundation. That's all for this one. Pretty quick, super important stuff. I know that you're going to have questions. Shoot them at me. I'll answer them all. Okay. I'll see you guys in the next one.